Hi you guys, welcome back to my Crypto 101 series, and today we're going to be going over the most famous rug pulls in the history of crypto. Now, rug pulls happen every single day basically, but not that many happen to where they result in billions and billions of dollars being lost from investor funds, and then people also being added to the FBI's most wanted list, okay? I will also be going over the laws and regulations against rug pulls and how some people find loopholes through it, and then how some people were not able to go through those loopholes and actually ended up going to jail for the rest of their lives because of the rug pulls. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on that. But before we get started, welcome back to Getting Digital with Deyzhah. Alrighty, you guys, so I picked 4 crypto projects that resulted in millions to billions of dollars being lost of investors' funds. And the first one that we're going to be going over is called OneCoin. Now, the estimated loss of investor funds is around $4 billion to $15 billion. Yes, I said that right. 15 billion. With a B capital. So how did it happen? Well, in 2014, it was presented by what they call the crypto queen, and her real name was Ruja Ignatova. All right, but it's called OneCoin, and it was supposed to be the next Bitcoin. All right, so basically functioning like Bitcoin, and then so much more is it what it presented itself to the public as. But in actuality, it was a big, massive Ponzi scheme without a functioning blockchain. And in 2017, you guys, she pulled the project and walked away with all of the funds, and she has not been found. She is currently on FBI's most wanted list. So she walked away with around $4 to $15 billion of investors' funds. All right. So let's pause here. If you watch my last video, you understand that these Ponzi schemes and these crypto scams and all that stuff, they can go on for years. It's not something that just happens overnight and then boom, they take all your money. It could happen like that, but it usually does not. You see, this lasted from 2014 to 2017. That is 3 years of this Ponzi scheme building up funds and building up all this hype and things behind it just for somebody, which is the owner, the founder, to pull the plug and walk away with all of the money. So it wasn't just Ruja Ignatova who walked away with these billions of dollars of these funds. It was also all the other founders as well. But Ruja is on the FBI's most wanted list for walking away with these funds because it was her project, all right? And she was known as the crypto queen. So she had a lot of traction, a lot of validity behind her. So you would think because she's this massive person in crypto that her coin and her network and her project would be legitimate, but it absolutely was not. Now let's go into our second one, which is going to be known as Thodex. All right, this was a Turkish, very famous Turkish cryptocurrency exchange. Not a crypto project, an exchange, okay? And in 2021, the founders shut down the project and walked away with around $2.6 billion of investors' funds. And how they did this, they claimed that they were having a lot of cyber attacks. That's what they claimed. But they shut down the whole entire project, the whole entire exchange, and walked away with all those cryptos funds from those investors. So the culprit in this one is going to be Faith Forex. I hope that's how you say his name. I apologize if you watched my video one day and I said your name wrong. Reach out to me. But apparently he fled the country, which is very suspicious, after making these fabricated claims of cyber attacks, fled the country and walked away with all those investor funds. Now, this is an exchange. I have to put emphasis on this. This is an exchange. Nobody is safe, even if you're on an exchange. That's why when you have crypto, if you own crypto, you really need to take your crypto off of any exchange and put it on a ledger, a cold wallet, to where it's taken off of line and put in a cold wallet where it cannot be touched. Now, that's for exchanges. If you're investing in a crypto coin and somebody pulls the plug on the project and like that specific crypto coin goes to zero, your coin in your ledger is also going to zero. All right. So the value of the coin is always still the same, but the safetiness is what changes when you have it on a ledger versus having it on a public exchange. And some famous examples of some crypto exchanges that exist today are going to be things like crypto.com and Coinbase. Now, those are very famous, very like legitimate and everything, but again, not your keys, not your coins. So they have access to your keys and all that. It's just not safe. It's just not safe. So put it on a ledger. Thank me later. All right, let's move on to number 3, and that's gonna be Squid Games. All right, I know y'all have heard of Squid Games, one of the most famous TV shows on Netflix to this day. All right, now they had a cryptocurrency coin that literally was a play to earn type of coin. All right, so but with that coin, you guys, with that coin, they had a malicious smart contract, so code built into the coin to make sure that when you bought the coin, you were not able to sell it. Okay, and that coin went from 1 cent to $2,800 within 1 week. And the founders and all that, they took all that money with them, and they walked around with around $3.38 million of investor funds. Okay, made that in about a week. 3.38 of investors funds million of investors funds. Okay, so easy the way they did it, and they just played off of the hype of the TV show. They didn't have to do that much. All right, they played off of the hype of the TV show. So Netflix and all these influencers and things like that, they're already promoting this stuff. All right, so they just made a coin to go along with it and then take all the money from it as well. It was a very, very, very big scam, and a lot of people lost their money. It's quite insane. Off of a TV show, something that has no utility. It's just like you play to earn. You're just playing a game and you earning, and yeah, it was bad. It was real bad. So the exact way that they did this is the founders of the coin, they pulled out their holdings, okay? So all the profit that was made, they pulled out their holdings and they crashed the price down by 99%, all right? Draining all of the liquidity. So that coin went to like basically zero, all right? Lower than zero, all right? So it's just like, you got to watch out for these things, you guys. So as you can see, these rug pulls that happen in history, they can be caused by something that is initially legitimate. Okay, so you had a legitimate TV show, you know, and things like that. And then you had a legitimate exchange. All right. Now that whole Bitcoin one, the one coin, I don't know how legitimate that was. That was off of pure hype. But I'm just saying, you know, legitimacy actually plays a role in these rug pulls. So you can't just look to see if something's legitimate or not to know if it's going to be a rug pull or not. You got to do like really even more deeper research than that. All right, now let's get into the last rug pull that I'm going over today. One of the biggest rug pulls ever in history happened in 2022, and this is going to be known as the FTX crash. All right, one of the biggest corporate failures in history and one of the biggest corporate frauds in history as well. Now, this is one of my favorite rug pulls in history because it's one of the biggest rug pulls in history. It was so massive, you know, but people did get their funds back. So that's why it is my favorite. People didn't just lose all their money, but let me tell you how it went down. So the founder of FTX is going to be known as Sam Bankman-Fried, also known as FBF. Now, this exchange, the FTX, was the third largest crypto exchange in the crypto market. Third largest crypto exchange in the crypto market, making it very legitimate, valued at around $32 billion. All right, $32 billion. And all of that $32 billion was lost over the span of a week. 1 week. Now with this one, we're going to go a little bit into detail with this because I want y'all to know everything that happened because this is a very, very big thing in crypto back in 2022. So I'm going to give you the textbook definition on why and how they ended up losing that $32 billion, right? So the crash was caused by a massive $8 billion hole in FTX's balance sheet. SBF, which is the founder, secretly funneled billions of dollars of FTX customer deposits to his private crypto hedge fund, which is known as the Alameda Research. Alameda used the customers' funds to cover its own bad trading losses, making risky venture bets, buying luxury real estate, and funding political donations. So basically used $8 billion worth of investors' funds for himself. For his risky investments, for his hedge funds, for his political donations, all that good stuff, to buy him some property, to buy him some Amiris, to buy him some Gucci, to buy him some Versace, all of it, all right? $8 billion worth. Now, I said that company crashed all within a week, and I'm going to give you the timeline of that happening. Also, it's coming straight from the source, all right, you guys? So, on November 2nd, 2022, the first thing that happened was known as the leak, all right? So a reporter a CoinDesk reporter revealed that Alameda Research's balance sheet was heavily propped up by FTT. Now, FTT was a token that the FTX created out of thin air, so no value, no utility. This meant that the two entities were financially codependent on a highly volatile asset, all right? So let's go over what I mean by that. FTX, this crypto exchange, created FTT just out of thin air. All right. And this is what's on the network, controlling network and things like that out of thin air. Now, on November 6th of 2022, the bank run happened. Binance CEO announced that Binance would liquidate its entire FTT holdings due to the revelations. This sparked panic and terrified retail investors pushed to withdraw $6 billion in just 72 hours. All right. So when they found out this coin, this FTT coin was fraudulent, like all the crypto exchanges was like, we want this off of our exchange, because if we're having this on our exchange and we're selling it to our customers, allowing our customers to trade in it, things like that, then we become responsible for allowing them to do that with a coin that we know is malicious. All right. Because that CoinDesk reporter already put out the report. Yo, this is a malicious coin, y'all. Like, watch out for it. So the crypto exchanges, the other crypto exchanges are like, yeah, we don't want this on there. All right. So in 72 hours, $6 billion wiped out immediately. Now on November 8th, the freeze happened. So because customers' funds had been illegally lent to Alameda, which was the research company or whatever, quote unquote, that he was funneling all the money through to be able to do his malicious activities, FTX didn't have the cash to fulfill the withdrawals. FTX froze all of the customers' withdrawals. So these customers could not withdraw their money. So November 11th is when the bankruptcy happens. So after a failed potential bailout deal from Binance collapsed, FTX, Alameda, and over 130 affiliated shell companies officially filed for bankruptcy. The crash wiped out over $1 trillion, trillion with a T, from the wider crypto community and market, and forced several other massive crypto firms such as Voyager Digital and Genesis Global into their own bankruptcies. All right. So you have to understand, with the crash of FTX, it led to the crash of other legitimate, non-malicious crypto firms, because they were so closely tied to this supposedly very legitimate exchange and their coin of FTT. All right, so let me tell you how investors got most of their money back. All right, $1 trillion wiped out of the market. Woo, that's a lot of money. All right, y'all. So in October of 2024, so the crash happened in 2022. This happens in 2024. A bankruptcy court approved FTX restructuring plan. Thanks to the liquidation of recovered real estate, venue investments, and rising crypto markets, the estate announced it recovered enough assets to fully repay 98% of users of up to 118 to 142% of their claimed value based on the dollar value of their crypto at the time of the 2022 crash. The CEO paid $11 billion back and had 20 years in prison. Has 20 years in prison. All right, you guys. So the investors basically did get their money back, years later. So their back pay years later. But that is just insane, you guys. Like, woo! And he went to jail for 20 years. He's in jail for 20 years for that and had to pay $11 billion back. And then also on top of that, he had to get rid of everything. So you see, that came full circle. He was being malicious with people's funds, like using it for all his special extravaganzas and things like that. And he literally ended with nothing, with zero, with bankruptcy, with nothing, and in jail. Crazy. So we went through all these rug pulls, and only some of them ended up with people going to jail for it, okay? Now, this is why it's very difficult to place people in jail for these rug pulls, because there's so many loopholes. But then, as many loopholes as it is to get out of getting charges, there's loopholes of getting those charges placed on you as well. All right, so let's talk about the criminal charges that are given by the Department of Justice. So they're putting it in different categories of what it can be labeled as, since it's such an unregulated market. They're using laws that already basically exist, tweaking them a little bit towards the situation so that they can be able to charge these people for stealing these investors' funds. So the first one we're going to go over is called wire fraud, all right? Textbook definition on how this works. So the government's strongest tool against crypto scams. It makes it a felony to use electric communications such as websites, social media hypes, smart contracts, or blockchain transactions to execute a scheme to defraud, carries a penalty of up to 20 years. So you see, oh buddy, With FTX, 20 years. He got the max. 20 years. Now next we have what they call conspiracies. So this is used to charge anybody involved on this scam, all right? So the prosecutor on this case could be able to charge everybody from the marketers, developers, from the founders, from like the early on investors who like knew what everything was going on. If you knew what was going on, you're getting charged, okay? So that's conspiracy. So that's another thing that allows these people to get put in jail for the bad things that they're doing in this crypto market. So another charge and tactic that the Department of Justice uses is going to be money laundering. So this is when they're charged when developers use decentralized mixers or chain hopping to disguise the liquidity. Chain hopping is rapidly moving crypto funds across multiple blockchains or swapping them for different tokens to obscure the transaction trail. So it's being malicious on the blockchain, kind of make it look real confusing on blockchain so that you can't really read what's happening. It's malicious activity. If they catch on to it, you're going to jail. So it's not only the Department of Justice who are after these criminals, it's also going to be the SEC and the CFTC that also form their own regulations and loopholes on how to put these people in jail. Because crypto is such an unregulated and like really new type of market, a lot of people don't even know what to label it. They don't know if they want to label it as securities, as commodities, like future commodities, or what. So the SEC and the futures commissions, they literally have their own way of charging these people as well, all right? Because some coins are considered a part of the CFTC, some coins are considered a part of the SEC, and some coins are just crypto, all right, you guys? Now, I'm going to tell you how the SEC runs their regulations on how to put these people in jail. So they know it as securities fraud. The SEC uses the federal securities laws to target projects where tokens were marketed as investment contracts. Promoters making false promises about future utility or value are sued for investors' misinterpretations. Securities and Exchange Commission, all right, this is what they do. So they're basically like, you lied. You lied about what this coin does, the utility behind it, the revenue that's going to be coming from it, and things like that. You just straight up lied, and you're going to go to jail for that, is what the SEC is saying. Next, we have the commodities fraud. So, the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, known as the CFTC, regulates crypto assets treated as digital goods or commodities. They police virtual currency pump and dump schemes and liquidity pool manipulations. All right, so they're like, yeah, y'all not getting away with this either, because both of these like organizations, the SEC and the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, like they both not even really liking crypto for real. So they trying to charge anybody who's doing malicious things on it. Yeah, we're putting you on jail. They really don't like it because they don't necessarily have full control over it, because a lot of the times it's confusing based on the characteristics of the coin and its utility if it belongs to the SEC or the futures, commission. So it's just like a lot of confusion there, and they don't like that. They don't like that. They like regulations. So if the federal agencies don't step in on these crypto scams, it's okay, because the state can step in on your behalf. So there are state laws and regulations against crypto as well, these loopholes that can put those people in jail. You can also individually sue them as well if you wanted to, like a civil lawsuit. So I'm going to get into that now. So we have civil litigation, which is when victims can collectively hire attorneys to file civil lawsuits against the organizers. Lawyers can use common law claims like breach of contract, unjust enrichment, and fraud to demand pre-judgment attachment orders to freeze a developer's known wallet. Okay, so you're freezing their wallet so nobody's walking away with no money, all right? There you go. So that's how a civil person or an individual, a group of individuals, can be able to prosecute these crypto scams. And now we're going to go over how the state can do it. So, consumer protection laws. States utilize Unfair and Deceptive Trade Practices Acts, known as the UDAP, to penalize developers who lie about project roadmaps, code audits, or token lockups, all right? So it's really hard if you take billions of dollars to just purely get away with it these days. There's so much regulations and things that are happening in the world today as we speak, as we're going on the Clarity Act, Stablecoin Act, all these different things that are Genius Act, all these different acts that are placing regulations on crypto. All right, so it may not be on rug pools specifically, but there's regulations being placed in real time on crypto to stop these things from being able to happen, to put some regulation and some structure into this market. I'm not exactly sure how I feel about that, if I'm being completely honest, because The point of crypto is the unregulatedness, the no central banks, no centralization and things like that, totally decentralized. But when we have these centralized exchanges and things like that can literally walk away with all your money, like the FTX crash or the Thodex and things like that, it's really questionable on how long crypto will be considered a decentralized market, as we're in modern day and time centralizing the market as we speak. So it is for the protection of the users, decentralization, but then it goes against the users in their privacy and them being to own all their money on their own and not have any central authority. Goes against that for them. So, it's a double-sided coin, of course. So let me know your thoughts on that, you guys. Do you think that crypto should stay decentralized, or you think there needs to be some level of centralization placed into it? Alrighty, y'all, that is it for today's video. I hope that you really enjoyed this, talking about rug pulls and how they go into jail and everything. A little bit of tea today, all right? But again, that is it for today. Stay tuned for my next episode tomorrow. I'm not telling you what that topic is going to be. You're just going to have to come and check it out. But before I leave, you guys, remember that pretty girls can do crypto too. All right, toodles.